Over the years, we have done our share of stories about police corruption, but none more outrageous than the one you're about to hear. It's the story of two New York City police officers who stand accused of being hired killers for the Mafia. Stephen Caracappa and Louis Eppolito, two highly decorated former detectives, are set to go on trial next month, charged with the murders of 10 people. Murders committed on the orders of a vicious mob boss. Tonight, for the first time, one of those detectives, Stephen Caracappa, who is free on bail, answers the allegations that he betrayed his badge and became a mafia hitman.
How do you respond to that?
Totally ridiculous. It's ludicrous. Anybody that knows me knows I love the police department. I couldn't kill anybody. I shot a guy once on a job, and I still think about it. Bothers me.
If you're not involved, why did they go after you?
I could come up with 100 different scenarios, but none of the scenarios make any sense to me myself. All I know is that I am here now, and I'm fighting for my life. I'm fighting for my reputation. I want to be vindicated of this, and I'm mad and I'm angry.
For most of his 23-year career in the New York City Police Department, Stephen Caracappa was widely respected for his tenacity and savvy in cracking complicated cases. He rose from street patrolman to undercover narcotics officer to first-grade detective, receiving numerous commendations along the way. He helped create the prestigious Organized Crime Homicide Unit. His mission was to investigate the Lucchese crime family, but instead, prosecutors say that in 1985, Caracappa and his former partner Louis Eppolito actually joined the family and began working for its brutal boss, Anthony Gaspipe Casso.
I have two detectives that work the major squad team for the New York Police Department.
What were their names?
Lou Eppolito and Steve. Steve, I can't, he's got a long last name, Caracappa? Yeah, Caracappa, whatever it is. I can't say it all the time, you know? Louis is a big guy, he works out. Steve, a little small, skinny guy.
I interviewed Anthony Gaspipe Casso in 1998 in prison, where he is serving a life sentence after admitting to 36 murders. He told me about the extraordinary relationship he had with detectives Caracappa and Eppolito. He also told his story to federal prosecutors, spelling out how, for a hefty salary, Caracappa and Eppolito would walk right up to Casso's enemies, trick them into believing they were under arrest, and then deliver them to Casso to be executed. That's exactly what Casso told us the detectives did to a young hood named Jimmy Heidel.
They put him in the car. The kid thought they were taking him to the station house, but they took him to a garage. When they got him to the garage, they laid him on the floor. They tied his feet, his hands, cuffs, put him in the trunk of the car. After that, I killed the kid. Myself. At that time, I gave Louis and Steve, I think, $45,000 for them delivering them to me.
You gave them a bonus for delivering someone to you killed?
Right. Well, they wanted to kill him for me. I didn't even have to do that. They were going to get him, kill him, and throw him, do whatever I wanted to do with him.
I don't know Heidel, never picked up Heidel. I never met Anthony Casso. I don't know Anthony Casso.
Never paid by Anthony Casso?
No, sir.
Why would Anthony Casso lie?
I don't know. To save himself, I would assume. But why would he use me? I don't know.
Casso was, in fact, hoping to save himself and reduce his sentence when he first told his astonishing account to investigators 12 years ago. But prosecutors say they couldn't charge detectives Eppolito and Caracappa then because they couldn't prove his story. But now they have witnesses to many of the murders who corroborate what Casso had to say. Among them, Jimmy Heidel's mother, who told investigators that the detectives came to her house looking for her son a few hours before he was abducted and killed. And a garage worker who told authorities where to dig up the body of another man, Caracappa and Eppolito, allegedly buried here beneath this lot in Brooklyn. The most brazen crime former detectives Eppolito and Caracappa are accused of took place here along New York City's Belt Parkway. Allegedly, in broad daylight, the two detectives pulled over a car driven by a mobster named Eddie Lino. They flashed their badges and, according to prosecutors, shot him dead.
I gave them $75,000 They killed him cowboy style. They pulled alongside of him, they shot him, they made him crash into the fence alongside the Bell Parkway on the service road. Right? Then Steve got out of the car, ran across the street, and finished shooting him, finished killing him in the car.
I was a New York City detective for 23 years. We don't go around killing people. I did not kill Eddie Leno. I'm not a cowboy.
Yeah, but I mean, being on the police force doesn't mean automatically I'm a good guy.
No.
There have been guys on the police force who have killed.
Yes.
So that doesn't, that's not a good answer for me.
Well,
to say I didn't do it because I'm on the job.
No, it's my answer. It's my answer because I have pride in myself, Mr. Bradley. I wouldn't do that. Put my life in jeopardy, my family, disgrace the badge, disgrace the city, take everything that I'd worked for my whole life and throw it away and kill somebody in the street like a cowboy? It's not my style. It's not me.
If you thought you wouldn't get caught?
Get caught. Everybody gets caught. And the person who did this is going to get caught.
Caracappa says he's also speaking for his friend and co-defendant Louis Eppolito, who declined our request for an interview.
He's not the monster that the newspapers portrayed him to be. We'll put up the evidence to show that we couldn't have done these crimes. We just couldn't have done them.
But prosecutors say Stephen Caracappa left a paper trail, a key piece of evidence, proving he used his position to access police department computers and funnel confidential information to Anthony Casso about the whereabouts of his enemies. One of them was a mobster named Nicholas Guido. Investigators say Caracappa ran that name through his computer, mistakenly came up with an address for the wrong Nicholas Guido, and a few weeks later, it led Casso to kill an innocent man.
I don't remember running Nicholas Guido in a computer, but if they have a printout saying I did, I probably did. I ran countless of names in the computer.
So you're saying it's just a coincidence that a month after you ran the name of Nicholas Guido through the computer, that a month later, a Nicholas Guido, an innocent man, was killed, shot to death?
I don't know if it's a coincidence, but if I did anything and I had to run a name, it's down on paper and it's documented why I did it.
And who you did it for?
And who I did it for. And I definitely didn't do it for any wise guy.
Stephen Caracappa's lawyer, Ed Hayes, argues it would have been implausible for a first-grade detective like Caracappa to make such a rookie mistake.
If he had been looking for the right Nicky Guido, it would have been easy for him to find him. It's practically impossible to me to assume that he would have made this mistake because he has based his whole career on avoiding that kind of mistake. Assuming you're going to kill people for money, you want to kill the right guy, not the wrong guy. Otherwise, you got to kill two people for the price of one, right?
Maybe he was just sloppy.
Yeah, maybe he made a mistake, or maybe he didn't do it. But in our system, you don't convict somebody on a maybe.
While that may be, prosecutors have also obtained information from a former top associate of Anthony Gaspipe Casso named Burton Kaplan, a convicted narcotics trafficker who claims he personally paid detectives Caracappa and Eppolito when they committed murders for Gaspipe Casso. Ed Hayes says neither Casso nor Kaplan have any credibility.
You have several individuals that even by criminal standards are revolting. And I think that they saw this as an opportunity to make a plan where they could get special treatment and get out of jail. And in fact, Burt Kaplan, who's a major drug dealer, a super large money launderer, has gotten out of jail because of making these accusations.
So you think you're being framed?
Mr. Bradley, I don't think it. I know it.
And Stephen Caracappa says he has a good idea why he was implicated in the first place. His relationship with Louis Eppolito, who came from a family of mobsters and wrote a book about it. Mafia Cop, the story of an honest cop whose family was the mob. In the book, Eppolito brags about socializing with mobsters and torturing suspects when he was on the job.
Do you ever worry that somebody on the jury might know of that book and say, well, if he did those things, it might not be that much of a leap to kill somebody for the mafia, and that you get lumped into that, guilt by association?
It could be, but if you knew Louis Eppolito and you spoke to Louis Eppolito and you spent any time with him, you would see he couldn't do that. The guy is gentle.
But there's a separate case that paints a dark picture of Louis Eppolito involving this man, Barry Gibbs, who spent 19 years in prison for a murder prosecutors now say he didn't commit. He was freed 4 months ago after a judge ruled that Detective Eppolito, who investigated the crime, intimidated the only eyewitness in the case into falsely testifying against Gibbs.
He's a corrupt cop and he's no good. And that's the end of it. He ruined my life. He could have done that to anybody. It just so happened it was me. He could have done it to you. He could have done it to anybody sitting here.
I'm jogging on this path right here.
That eyewitness who testified against Gibbs was a former Marine, Peter Mitchell. In 1986, Mitchell saw a man dumping a woman's body along this road in Brooklyn. He gave a description of the suspect to Eppolito, who was on the scene investigating the murder. And while his description bore no resemblance to Barry Gibbs, Mitchell says Eppolito threatened to hurt him and his family if he refused to pick Gibbs out of a police lineup and point the finger at him in court.
When you testified against him, Barry Gibbs, you knew that you were lying.
Yes, I did.
You knew that your testimony would put him in prison.
Yeah, but you know what? I want this cop after me.
How could you do that?
How could I do that? Yeah. My family was on the line here. If I had to do it, I'll do it again.
But he was innocent.
Yeah, well, either me dying or get a bullet shot in the head, or my mother go to jail, or my father go into jail. Come on.
So you thought if you didn't finger Barry Gibbs, you'd be dead?
I'll be dead. Like this.
As for Barry Gibbs, he would still be in prison today if prosecutors hadn't stumbled across his case file last spring during a search of Louis Eppolito's home. Eppolito has not been charged with any criminal wrongdoing in this case and maintains that Barry Gibbs is guilty. But the former detective made a brief statement to reporters about the 10 murder charges against him.
I was a very highly decorated cop. I worked very hard my whole life, and I just want the people to know that I'm not the person that they're portraying me. Louis, were you ever a bad cop? Never in my life.
The question for the jury in this case, which goes to trial next month, is, did 2 decorated police officers cross the thin blue line and become hitmen for the Mafia?
You must know that if you get convicted on even one of these murder charges, you'll go down in history as one of the most corrupt cops in the history of the department.
That's true, Mr. Braley, but I won't be convicted because I didn't do this. Didn't do it, so I'm not going to be convicted. I won't have that on my epitaph.